This episode of the Fight Within podcast is presented to you by Meguiar's. For over 115 years, Meguiar's has been carefully creating and producing advanced formulas with cutting-edge chemistry to deliver a show car perfect appearance. Whether you're showing on the fairway, finalizing your car for auction, or simply getting your beloved car ready for a weekend drive, Meguiar's is ready to help with their premium car care products to make every automotive surface look its absolute best. Meguiar's, reflect your passion. Make sure to visit them at meguiars.com.
What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Fight Within podcast. Today's guest is my boss and the head coach of the Mission Viejo Diablos, Chad Johnson. Thanks so much for coming on, man, and appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
And like every episode, let's dive right in.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your background, kind of your upbringing, and then why you decided to get into coaching.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. And so I'm a Mission Viejo kid. I grew up in Lake Forest and went to El Toro High School, and then was lucky enough to play some college football. Played 1 year at the University of Iowa, and then 3 years at Hofstra. Was around a lot of great coaches, but before that, I guess I'd probably tell you, like, my dad was a coach. He was a basketball coach growing up. In fact, he was on the same staff at Bolsa Grande High School with Cleet Adelman, who is Rick Adelman's brother. Rick Adelman, the famous NBA coach. And then his best friend, Bill Reynolds, went on and coached at Vanguard for a bunch of years. Back then it was called SCC, and now it's called Vanguard. But he was coached there for a bunch of years, and then I actually got to be a ball boy when they took a group of All-Americans from NAIA to Europe. We played like in Scandinavia. We were like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, all those areas.
Oh, wow.
And he was an assistant coach, and I got to be the ball boy. And I still remember my job was anytime a player came off the court, is water and towel. That was my main job. I was so focused on water and towel. So I saw him coach, and I kind of was interested in it. And actually, basketball was actually my favorite sport.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was, and it still might be. Like, I love basketball. Problem is when you're 5'11" and white, there's not much of a future for basketball. So, I knew football was kind of be my path, and then the biggest influence I think I had in becoming a coach was what I saw my high school coaches do in my two best friends' lives. Mike and Merle, and kind of their upbringing and their struggles, and how high school coaches made a giant difference in them. And now, they both went to college. One went to Montana, one went to Villanova, and they're both flourishing in life. One's making $250,000 a year. The other one's a guidance counselor at Laguna Hills High School. So, they both made it. They're both, married with kids and wives and families, and they just made a giant difference in their lives. And I kind of always thought, like, man, I kind of want to follow in those footsteps and do what they did, and make differences in kids' lives.
When did you come into that? Like, when was that a reality? Because you played at Iowa, then you went to Hofstra. Did you, while you were in college, were you like, oh man, I'm gonna make it to the NFL? Like, I'm gonna go to the league?
Yeah.
Or were you?
No, I knew I wasn't good enough. I mean, I was kind of, I had the fortunate, situation where I had been around guys that are NFL guys, and I could just clearly see a difference between me and them. I was like, okay, I'm not that good, and I was able to see that in high school. Like, I would go to these camps, and I was around these NFL guys, and like Brad DeLuiso and John Lee and all these guys, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so far away. I remember, Brad DeLuiso like one-stepping 60-yard field goals, and I'm like, there's just no way. I'm never.
In high school?
No, he was in the NFL at the time.
Okay.
I think he was the kickoff guy for the Giants at the time, if I remember correctly. But I just remember, like, those guys, and even some of the college guys I was around, they were just so good. And so, I didn't really like it either. That was my thing. Like, I was good at it, but I didn't really like it. I wanted to play football, because I played center in high school, and then I also had this side thing where I kicked. And I was just better at kicking than I was at playing center as far as college was concerned, but I never really liked it. So every time I go out there, I was kind of like, I'm doing it because I'm good at it, but I don't really care for it. I'd rather play basketball, but I can't do that, because at the time I was, I'm 6 feet tall, and I was 270, which, I'm basically the same weight now. Yeah. So I was a big guy, and I was like, okay, 6 foot 270 is not a great basketball player, and so I was like, all right, well, I guess I got to do this. And then I just kind of always, when I went to Iowa, my parents my dad was like, he really into, you need to be a computer guy. Like, you need to go into like computer management systems or whatever it was called. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, look how much money they make coming out of college and blah, 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 blah. And management information system, something like that. And I was like, okay. So I went in Iowa with that idea, and I just hated it. I mean, my grades weren't very good because I hated going to class. I was like, this is not what I want to do. So I went to Hofstra. I kind of told my parents, I was like, listen, I'm changing my major. I'm going into education. I want to be teacher and coach. And I remember Dad's like, why would you want to do that? You know what I mean? like you're not going to make any money, blah, 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 blah. And I kind of told him, I go, I've always wanted to do it, and I just was kind of too afraid to tell you, that I didn't want to do what you wanted me to do, and so, after I told him that, he was totally supportive, and I was all in. And then the best part about it was two things. When I was at Hofstra, I was around some of the greatest coaches like of all time. I just didn't know it, and I don't think they knew it yet. When I was at Hofstra, the D-line coach, who was also the strength coach, was Dan Quinn, who is now the defense coordinator of the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Okay. The DB coach, okay, was Raheem Morris, who's now the D coordinator of the Super Bowl champion Rams.
Dang.
Okay. The other safeties coach was Joe Woods, who I think he's the D coordinator of the Redskins. I'm not sure. He was with the Broncos for a while. But so, and then offensively, right, Kyle Flood, who was the O-line coach at Hofstra, is now the O-line coach at Texas.
Yeah.
He was the head coach at Rutgers or whatever. And then we had all these famous coaches on staff at Hofstra, but they were just getting started.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know, I don't think at the time, who they were going to be. But now, now they're all in the NFL and killing it. And so what I'm trying to say is, when I was there and I knew I wanted to coach, I would just sit there and watch, and watch and see how practice went, and study film. My roommate was the center, All-American center. Mm-hmm. So I'd constantly ask him. My other roommate was a receiver, and the other roommate was a back quarterback. So I would always ask them, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And just kind of pick their brain, because I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to coach and teach.
Then did that, being around them and being influenced by them and your high school coaches, did that kind of then develop how you wanted to coach? Because everyone has a different style.
Yes.
We have some old school coaches that are screamers, some
Yes.
guys that are more reserved and quiet.
Yep.
Other guys are very vocal and loud. What helped develop your style of coaching?
I think the biggest thing that I saw early on is you got to be yourself. You have to be authentic.
Yeah.
Players will see right through you if you're trying to be, fake. You're faking it.
Yeah.
And I think, Raheem was a big influence on me. He probably doesn't even know this, but I just saw the way he interacted with the players, how much they loved him, how he got along with them, but still coached them. And it's not a surprise that he's, catapulted to the same with Dan Quinn. They're all just I guess you would consider them the players' coaches, but at the same time demanded respect. When it was time to work, they got the best out of their players. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then the other thing is, they always had a great relationship with their players off the field. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of coaches that are great coaches. They're great with kids, but off the field, hey, Deuce, I'm out of here. I'm going home to my family, and there's no relationship with their players off the field. And I think that's the mistake that some coaches make, is you have to have that. As the head coach, I can't have with every single player. Obviously, I'm the offensive coordinator, so more of my relationships with the offensive guys. But when you're coaching a group like I do the quarterbacks, you've got to have a relationship with those guys off the field. You have to.
It's crazy, because I feel like I've been. I don't know if we talked about it. You were my head coach, not head coach. You were my position coach, or one of them.
Yeah.
Because I played O-line for a little bit, but was mainly a defensive lineman.
Correct.
But he was the reason, and I think I've told you, but for the audience that haven't heard it, my freshman year at Trabuco Hills High School, I was in your world geography class. And we're about 2 or 3 weeks into school, and it was his first year teaching. You were just out of college, so it was your first teaching job. I think it was your first year teaching in 2001.
Yep.
And then he goes, "Hey, Laura, you play football?" I was like, "No, I have no clue where to sign up, what to do." And you're like, "Come out to practice." So I did. My whole freshman year, I was on the B team, and I started. And then my sophomore year, JV started. But I feel like I grew up with you, because then you guys took over the varsity program my junior year. Mm-hmm. and I was just like, oh, it's really cool. Like the same guy that like told me to play is now coaching varsity, and I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And then just I don't know if I've ever told you, but like just the impact you guys had, specifically you, on my life in coaching, I think is a testament to the reason you wanted to coach.
Yep.
Because I was a big troublemaker, and I talked about it in one episode, but like going into my senior year, I got in a fight, like bad. Like I was about to get expelled.
At school?
At school. And well, I got expelled my freshman year for fighting, left, thought my life was over because I couldn't do football anymore. And then my junior year, that summer, I got into another fight. You know, obviously I ended up being a professional fighter. Cool, it turned out great. But at the time, I was just a jackass. I was just a troublemaker, trying to be cool. And you sat down with me going into my senior year, and you're like, you do not run this school. Like, you are in South Orange County. Stop trying to be tough. And I was like, touche. Like, you got a point. And you're like, you can do, you said something along the lines as you can do something special in football, focus on that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, cool. And obviously my senior year, I had, like the best year before I hurt my knee, and still came back and did fine. But I had so much fun. And I think it's one of those things where like, you weren't at the time, I'm sure you were more because you were younger. You were probably closer to our age.
Right.
You were like a player's coach, but you still demanded respect. And it's the same thing that you were talking about, like the Dan Quinns of the world. And that's so to me, just to publicly acknowledge that and say thank you. I appreciate it. But anyways, back to your story after I selfishly took some of your limelight. Yeah, you're in college. You know you want to coach, so you get out and then coach at Tribuco.
Yeah.
Was that to you because you were local? You're a Lake Forest kid. You grew up in the area. Was that something you wanted to do? Was coach locally?
Yeah, no, I mean, so the story behind that was I graduated from college, and before I graduated, I was trying to make phone calls, back home to set up my job, because I graduated in May, and I want to try to start teaching, that fall and coach.
Yeah.
And so I remember I came back. Obviously, the first thing I did was call my head coach that I played for in high school, Mike Milner. And unfortunately, he didn't have a teaching job. There was just nothing available in history. And so he was like, hey, try to call the guy at Tesoro, try to call. So he helped me out, gave me some numbers. And then my dad knew another one of my guys I look up to, is a guy named Jim Perry, who was the head basketball coach and AD at La Quinta, my dad's school he taught at for a bunch of years. And Jim is now like way up there in CIF. He's an awesome guy. And he had all these basketball connections. Well, I want to coach both football and basketball. I want to do those two sports. So Jim started making phone calls, and he ended up making a call to a guy named Reiner Wolf, who was the AD at Tribuco, right? He was also the head basketball coach at the time.
So basketball coach?
Yeah, he was head basketball coach. Yeah.
He had like a military haircut.
That name sounds so familiar.
Yeah, for sure. And so he ended up calling Reiner, and Reiner, they had a situation where they actually had a basketball / history teacher that was leaving the profession at the last minute because they got like a job with like Canon copiers, and it was like making way more money. He was like, I'm out, deuces. Because when you start out teaching, like you're low on the totem pole. Like you don't make money until you're like 15 years in, really.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, it's public knowledge. You can go see like year one, the salary scale. It's just sliding scale. And so I remember I had that, and I also had I got it called by Doug Case, and I had an interview at Foothill. And so I went to the Foothill interview before Tribuco one. They actually offered me the job at Foothill, and so I called up Reiner Wolf, and before my interview at Tribuco, I told Reiner, I was like, listen, or it was my second interview, I think. I was like, hey, I turned down the Foothill job, and Reiner was like, you did what? Like this is not a guarantee. You should have taken that. And I was like, oh no, what did I do? But like in my gut, like I just knew that Tribuco is where I wanted to be because Reiner and a couple other guys that I had met, Mike Burns actually, who is the head baseball coach at Tribuco, I met him, and so I just kind of felt like a really good fit there. And I'm so glad I did it because then I, met all the people, Dan O'Shea and Kevin Heddick and Jason Nager and all the guys that we had on that staff who have gone on and done great things. And then, I just feel like it was just kind of like meant to be. I got lucky. Yeah. So I started, teaching and coaching. I'll never forget, like the fourth day, I had just graduated college from Hofstra, which is probably 30 minutes, if that, from Manhattan, right, on Long Island. And my like fourth day of teaching was September 11th, 9/11. So I get up that morning and I turn on the TV and it's just like, holy cow. So I immediately start picking up my phone, start making phone calls back to my friends, because a lot of us at Hofstra, when they graduate, the first job they get is in the city, because they're grinding. So they're in the city getting their first jobs that summer. And they're all, a bunch of my friends were in the city, grinding with sales jobs or whatever it might be. And so I'm making phone calls, trying to make sure everyone's okay. And then my teammates, were still playing, making phone calls. I mean, you couldn't. They cut it off. Like, you couldn't make a phone call. You call back and you couldn't get a hold of anybody. And I'm just like watching it. And then obviously the planes hit the Pentagon and then everything else. And you're just like, holy cow. And that was, I'll never forget, that was my first year teaching, like the fourth day. And I'm teaching culture geography, so we're literally teaching about the world and cultures and things like this, and you're like, oh, wow. And so I'll never forget that. That was my first day, 9/11/2001. It was like my fourth, fifth day teaching.
That's wild. I was in 8th grade for that.
Yeah, I was a freshman.
Because
I was at
you're ahead of me,
Yeah.
No.
I was in Miss Ochoa's class.
Yeah.
And everything started going down.
I'm pretty sure I had her too.
Well, and then what's crazy is the district office sent out an email to all of us teachers and told us, turn off the television, don't stop
really?
watching. Yeah. About half through the day, it was like, turn off television, stop watching it, and because they were worried about like the mental stress of putting,
kids.
of kids and seeing it and like, not knowing, are we under attack? Are we going to, what I mean? Because you didn't know in the first 4 hours of that happening, you didn't know, and no one knew what was going on. So they actually instructed all of us to turn off our televisions, in the classroom. So we, of course, we put it on the football office and we're watching it, but they didn't want kids around watching it.
Could you imagine that in today's world?
Oh,
People would.
they'd freak out.
Yeah.
They'd be so. I say it all the time, but people are so soft nowadays that I could imagine, like, if that was on in the classroom now, people would be like, oh, I need an emotional stress day. Like,
Yeah. It was crazy, man. I still remember to this day.
Why do you think that is, though? We've talked about it, but it'd be interesting because you've been around kids, and you don't have to name names or anything, but I just think there's been such a culture shift in football, too.
It's parenting. 100,000. My thing is this.
But even with sports?
Yeah, no.
Because when we were in high school, it was, I wanted to be the strongest kid on campus. I didn't care about just football. Like, I wanted to be the strongest kid.
It's parenting.
There.
Like, no baby is born a bad kid. No baby is born soft. No baby is born. It's a blank canvas.
Yeah.
It's the parenting. It's because now what's funny is I was just talking about this on Saturday night. I had a friend over at my house, Ed Koo, good dude, and we were just talking about like parenting and how that the parenting books are now shifting to going back to spanking your kid and being disciplinarian and your kid needs to fear their dad and all those things. Well, for a long time it was the parenting books were don't spank,
gentle parenting.
Yeah, timeouts and all those things. And then they realized they raised a bunch of soft, people that can't make it in the world. Yeah, and because they've never been disciplined and that's my thing. I think when in my experience as a coach, you can easily see who has good parents and who does not, in the players you coach. And I think that is the biggest difference between the days that we were raised, and then today. I would say today it's getting better because, again, like the paradigm shifting, all the parenting books are going back and saying we made a mistake. We need to parent the way we parented back in the day. And I think that hopefully it'll get better because we realized we made a mistake. But yeah, for a while there, everyone was telling that if you spanked your kid, you were a child abuser, and it's just simply not true.
I mean, all the kids that got spanked are now the parents. So
I know.
Well,
we're going back to that.
100%, and it's one of those things where it's like, hey, I was spanked all the time, and I think I've turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I think the last time I got spanked was probably my senior year. My mom was like 5'2" and would whoop my ass.
Yeah.
She didn't care.
So there's a difference, though, I think, like to the parenting topic of today, because I see it too. I employ a lot of young people.
Right.
So I think there's a difference where we've lost just kind of like, even in today's society, we've lost the ability to just have like rational conversations without getting so pissed off, right? Well, with parenting and the shift, I think to touch on that is, there's a difference between disciplining out of anger and disciplining to discipline.
Right.
And people get it twisted. You can discipline because you love your child.
Yeah.
You don't have to discipline out of a place of anger.
Right.
And that's what people mistake. It's like you think if you're punishing or spanking or whatever type of discipline, oh, you're just angry. Well, no, I'm doing it so my 3-year-old knows not to run in the street and
Right.
get hit by a car.
100%.
If I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, no, hey, baby, don't do that.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I'm going to do the opposite because that's the stage she's in.
Yeah.
But if I, like, pull her aside and, like, give her a stern warning and reason of why not to, then maybe she'll be like, oh, like, there's danger. Like, maybe I'll stay away.
Yep.
Versus just, getting pissed off. But people forgot that.
Well, not only that is that, like, now, like, kids are allowed to, like, debate with their parents over when they.
Yeah, no.
It's like no, I'm not getting a debate with my 7-year-old on why you think you should not be grounded or spanked right now because, no. And I just told my kids this last night, like, they're arguing with their mom about staying up later and they want to go to bed, and I turned to them and I said, hey, listen, I go, I'm telling you now to go to bed, and they start arguing. They go, no, what did I tell you? When I tell you to do something, there's no questioning.
Yeah.
You do it, or else you're going to get spanked. Go to bed, and they know when I go. Yep, then right to bed.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, and it's just like, but the problem is some people don't want to. They want to sit there and argue with their kids. I'm like, I got a 7-year-old and 5-year-old, so I'm really at 9:00 at night when they're supposed to be at 8:30. Gonna have a full-on debate like we're in the middle of a court, and you know what I mean, and someone's judging this this court case on whether or not you should go to bed at 9 or not. Like, no, we let you stay up a half hour to watch the rest of that Disney movie, get in bed, or something bad's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Bottom line, but people just don't want to do that right now. They don't want to teach their kids that there are consequences for their actions.
But that's the biggest thing, though. Like, I tell my son, who I feel is pretty respectful, but I tell him, like, I will stop spanking you the day you can whoop my ass. So when you can beat me, I'll stop beating you. It's that simple. But I also try to put things in a perspective for not just him, but my other kids. Like, hey, look, the moment you are making your own way, paying your own bills, taking care of yourself, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
I go, until then, respect this home, respect what you're doing. Like, I'm sure he wouldn't mind. Like, he's grounded right now.
Yeah.
Because it was the 3rd time I told him, do not come home past this time.
Yeah.
3 times in a row. It wasn't like 30 minutes, 10 minutes. It was like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Past his curfew. And we were being cool about it. And I go, okay, well, it sucks. Summer's coming up. Can't hang out with your friends. Can't have your cell phone. Can't watch TV. Like, what else do you have? He's, oh, well, I just have football. Cool.
Yeah.
So study film.
Yeah.
Hang out. Go to practice.
Right.
And then, like, the other day, he has a week left, but Saturday, he goes, oh, can I go to this person so-and-so's birthday party? I go, are you serious right now?
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, I just thought I'd ask. And I go, no. Like, what's the point of being grounded if you don't feel like something's being taken away?
Right.
I go, maybe next time you won't come home. I go, I would have picked you up.
Right.
Because he was at the beach. I would have gone to the beach just so you can make it back home in time.
Right.
But I go, that's not my job. I'm not teaching you any sort of responsibility if I just go bail you out. I said, you have to go do it. Like, my mom always told me growing up, she's like, if you ever get in trouble and you end up in jail, she's like, you're staying there.
Yeah.
I'm not bailing you out. Like,
Right.
You're staying the weekend till you can see a judge. Like, that's your fault.
Yep.
That's not my fault.
Right.
And so I think it's good, and it's all out of, if you really love someone,
Yes.
it has to come out of love. Like you were saying, you can discipline your kids out of love. You sit down and explain to them, you did this wrong. Therefore, these are the consequences.
Yep.
I love you, but in order for you to learn, I have to do this.
100%. And to that point too, it's like, I think if you talk to any successful person, whether they're in business or coaching, whatever, they're disciplined. Mm-hmm. There's a discipline of what they do with their work ethic and toughness and all of that. It doesn't have to be toughness through, hitting someone hard on the football field, just toughness of getting every day and be able to do the things you need to do to be successful. Well, if they're not taught discipline, from a young age of like, this is what you're going to do because this is how you're going to be successful. You're not going to do this. You are going to do that. I think you have a bunch of people that end up going to be employees that are unemployable. Like, you can't employ them because they show up late and they think like it's okay. Well, why? Well, because my parent never grounded me for being late on a curfew.
Yeah.
They let you say, oh, Johnny, just don't do it next time, please, Johnny. and so now you want your employer to say, Johnny, don't do it next time. No, you're fired. Like the number one reason people get fired in America is not for, getting in trouble at work or not being smart enough. It's because they can't show up on time. They're literally, it's punctuality. They miss. They're not there. They show up late. That's the number one reason people get fired. So it's like that's something as a parent you can teach your kid at a very young age, that you will be on time. You will show up when you're supposed to show up. You're not 5 minutes. You're late. But people say, "Oh, it's being mean if you spank them or discipline them when they're later." But you're helping them become successful in life.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we've kind of made a big mistake, and I hope that it keeps on shifting back to, we need to bring up kids a certain way.
Mm-hmm. And to touch on let's touch on that as a coach, coaching from basically 2000 to now, 22 years, and we just spent 10 minutes talking about the cultural shift. How have you adjusted your coaching style to be appropriate to what people in today's world deem appropriate?
Oh, I haven't. And the reason,
Awesome.
I haven't. And a lot of times I feel like I have to make up for poor parenting. It's like, well, okay, if no one's going to parent these kids, I am. And I'm going to teach them through football. Like, I don't care what your parents say. In this program, you're not 5 minutes or you're late. You will do this. You will be that. There's consequences. I'm not going to spank a kid, but whether it's bear crawls or extra running or rolling or whatever consequence football does, right? Every sport has their. In basketball, it's more, suicides or, whatever we do. It's just one of those things where it's like, no, like, I think as a coach, you are failing if all you teach your kids in football is the X's and O's and how to play the game of football. Like, you're failing. You have to teach them life lessons. And I remember, for a long time, we were doing it when I was at Chibuco with you, Manny. We were doing it, but it wasn't intentional. Because we were doing it with the relationships we had, and we were doing some of the talks, like, you talked about earlier how I sat you down and talked to you about, you messing up, you need to fix it and blah, blah. But there wasn't like an intentional lesson curriculum on trying to get our kids to where we needed them to get ready for life. So that's something that I kind of shifted when I got my master's degree, honestly. We talked about it a lot in my Concordia program, where you need to be more intentional as a coach, more transformational, not just transactional. And so now we do a much better job of being intentional about our curriculum and our lesson plans, of delivering that message to our players that these are all the life lessons that football is supposed to teach you. Make sure you have them in your toolbox. And perseverance, toughness. Here's how the game of football teaches toughness and perseverance. Here's a situation later in life where you may need it. Now, I'll talk about death of my mom. I'm sitting there with a wife and 2 kids, and I'm going through my master's program, and my mom dies of cancer. And I could have easily been like, Professor so-and-so, I can't turn this paper in on time. I got to plan my mom's funeral, which probably would have been an excuse a professor would have taken.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, like, I'm not doing that. Like, the game of football taught me, you got to be tough. You got to be able to compartmentalize, and you got to be able to grind through. Right. Yeah. So I never sent a professor an email, got a 4.0, everything, A in every single assignment. Never missed a game. It was in the middle of the season. I missed 1 week of practice. We were playing Loyola, and my mom was like in ICU because she had like this pericardial deal where like the cancer came around her heart and was like constricting on her heart, and they had to cut a window out. And so I remember I missed that week of practice, but made the game, and then I never missed anything after that, because I'm like, you got to be able as a coach, I think, to demonstrate what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be like, oh, do as I say, not as I do. No, you got to be able to do both. Like,
you have to lead from the front.
100%. Lead from the front. If you expect the kids to be every single day, you got to be there every day. If you want the kids to be on time, you got to be on time. And so that was kind of my deal on that. But no, I don't change at all. Not at all. We the bar is here. We're not going to lower it at all.
I love that you said that, because I like asking questions like that. Because I business coach. It's similar, but obviously I'm not coaching children,
right,
where you have the ability to play a huge role. I'm coaching adult. Pretty much every single person's been older than me, And so it's one of those weird things, right? Like getting someone that's older than you to listen to like, oh, what's this young guy got to offer you? Well, I have a lot of life experience, so I want to use my life experience to help.
Right.
But that same perspective of I'm not going to change in my business, in anything that I do. I'm not going to change the way I view and do things for anyone, no matter what, because that will show that there is a bar that's set. Yep. And I have to live up to it. You have to live up to it as a coach. Like, you have to live up to it. It's like, yeah, I set the bar, but I can move the bar, right? But living up to something and showing the grit that it takes to get there, I think is something that will show high school kids something even more.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. As far as the bar, now I will say, like, the way that kids respond to coaching and how you coach them may be different nowadays. And I mean by that is, I think that today's kid wants to know why more than maybe we did when we were playing. You know, we were told, do this. It's like, hey, how high do you want me to jump, coach? Now it's like, well, it's like, hey, well, why do we run that pass pro? You know, why do we run that defense? Why do we slant, away from the back or to the back, or all the different things of football, right? And I actually have no problem with that, because I think that teaching the kids why, even if I was coaching back in the 30 years ago, I would have coached them why, because I want them to have a complete grasp of what we're doing. Yeah, I think it makes a better player.
That shows the cultural shift, though, and the cultural shift hasn't been fully bad. But to speak into that, it shows that today's generation of kids, they want to know why, because they're a lot more intuitive when it comes to, well, I'm an individual, so I need to understand why I'm doing something, versus previous generations. Like you said, you were told what to do and when to do it, and you did it.
Yes, sir. How high do you want me to jump? Yeah. No doubt. And so, I like that. I think, another influence that had on my coaching career, honestly, I got to give him credit, is Bosco and the Salesian Order of Catholic Priests. I didn't know it, but my whole life I was coaching like a Salesian, and then I got to Bosco and, was taught the way the Salesians, worked with kids, right? So, the whole story of St. John Bosco, and that's why he became, a very famous priest, is because he was working with wayward boys and in Italy and all of these things. Well, their big thing is meet the kids where they're at. And I remember very clearly, like, the head priest of the school, Father Linden, was like, if they like Tupac, you like Tupac. And I was like, so they're going like, there's a Vietnamese priest who's like 60-something years old, and he's literally telling us, like, if your kids like Tupac, then you better like Tupac. You better know who Tupac is, better know his songs, better be able to sing them. Because, their biggest thing is, meet the kids where they're at. And together, that accompaniment, that journey together, you're going to make, and that's how the Salesians believe on growing young men. And I was always that way, like, with you guys, trying to develop that relationship. There's nothing more that I want to do by the end of 4 years of coaching, my position group, is be able to tell them I love them, and they say, like, I love you back. And it's not like weird,
genuine.
But it's genuine.
Yeah.
From a mentor situation, and that's what I think I try to develop. I want to be able to love my kids, and then I want them to love each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the Salesian side that I learned from my time at St. John Bosco. I think that they are right on. I think that's the way, especially in today's day and age, when you do have so many broken homes and mom hates dad and the kids are in the middle and blah, 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 blah. And I think that they're looking for that accompaniment, from another father figure or another, adult figure.
Yeah.
And then this is the Bosco way, the Salesian way. It's been dating back to like the Industrial Revolution, like 1800s is when they started getting their deal going. So yeah, I think that's another impact that I have. It kind of goes along with the transformational coaching. I always ask my coaches every single year, so the one question you guys always have to ask yourselves is, what does it feel like to be coached by you? Like, what does it feel like to, you had to answer that.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to be coached by you? And if you put yourself in the player's seat and you kind of go over things that you've said, whether it's been harsh or mean, because, the thing with coaching is it's generally like negative. Like, the job of a coach is to tell someone what they're doing wrong and how they can do it better. If you're training a fighter and you're like, hey, listen, you did that wrong right there. This is how you need to do it next time. well, it's not positive. It's generally like you need to fix it. So, that's the one thing we have to be careful of as coaches is making sure that, no matter how hard we coach them and how many things we tell them they need to correct, that at the end of the day they know we care about them and we're there for them, and you try to use positive reinforcement when you can. But that's just the nature of coaching. It's generally you're coaching something that they're doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think, well, coaching, people forget, is like you said, a coach's job is not always like great.
Right.
You have to cause tension in somebody in order to help create like momentum.
Right.
Like we had Hendry on last week, and he said a lot of, if you had the time, you should listen to last week's episode. Hendry's like a mentor to me. He's the one that certified me as a business coach. The guy just has so much knowledge, and it comes from a lifetime of experience. He was hostage negotiating, working in South African government.
Wow.
But hearing him talk is just like such a, you're saying things that like remind me of that. But a coach's job is to push somebody to create themselves to be like a better version. And people forget that. And I remember being young and having a coach tell me to do something, and I'm like, the heck, I'm better than you, like in my head. Right. Like I would never say it out loud, because back then you probably got something thrown at you or something. But
no, I mean, and that's where I think the why comes in too, like what you're saying. Like, even in the weight room, like we constantly talk to the players of why we're doing something in the weight room, why the rest interval has to be what it is when you're doing sets below or above 85% and sets of 10, why the tension has to be there for 50 seconds, like speed work. Why are we taking these breaks in between each set of an agility drill or whatever. And I don't mind telling them exactly why we're doing it, because the bottom line, if you're a coach and you can't tell a player why you're doing something, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
So you have no business doing it.
Right. And so we're talking to our players about, okay, there's alactic, capacity, and there's alactic power when you're talking about speed development. One is you're trying to improve your 40 time, let's say, from a 4.8 to a 4.7. That's alactic power. Then there's alactic capacity. You're trying to make sure you can run your best 40 for 60 plays a game. Mm-hmm. Because when you do all the research behind it, you're saying, okay, well, we tracked a player in the first quarter when they're fresh, and they're running within 0.2 of their best 40 time for the first half. Then we track them in the second half when they're getting tired, and they're running like 4 to 6 tenths slower than the best 40 time. So if you were a 4.7 40 time, in the fourth quarter when the game's on the line, you're running a 5.2, 5.3 because you're gassed. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, from a strength and conditioning world, how do we fix that? Well, that's capacity, right? So you have to basically do, and build up to it, of course, 60 different drills that are football movement-like, with the same rest interval as you would have in a game, right? So what's the rest interval between plays in a game? Well, there's like a 25-second clock. Well, there you go. Yeah. If you go past 25 seconds, the flag gets thrown. It's delay a game. So so you have to train that way. And I think when you tell athletes why you're doing it, I think there's just a better buy-in.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with today's athlete asking those questions at all. Yeah. Some coaches.
It's like in business, though. When there's a problem and you provide a solution, you're essentially saying, hey, this is the issue. This is why we're doing it. We're going to get you better because of this. Here's how you do it.
Right.
They're going to buy in. Yeah. I think, go ahead.
No, you.
I was just going to say another way that I feel like it's been identified in the program, specifically because it's the only coaching job I've ever had other than MMA, but it's when we do a couple things. One is like when you identify right before season like what the expectations are. And then two is during the season, each coach has the word of the week, and you have to be able to relate it to life and football. Mm-hmm. And I think that, because I always tell my son, it's like how you do one thing is how you do everything, and it translates to every area of your life. And I think that's key that I've seen in business, that I've seen in coaching, is when you identify what this program stands for, what we're going to get out of it, how football relates to life, it helps them, and it helps the kids buy in. Mm-hmm. I don't remember doing that in high school. I mean, I don't remember doing half the drills we're doing now, but it's just way different.
Yeah.
I think the coaching has developed because how I was coached versus how I coach is completely different.
Correct.
Because I didn't like how I was coached.
Correct.
And so I'm like, okay, how can I now I'm more reserved. I'm loud sometimes when I need to be, but I'm more reserved. I like pulling the kid aside and saying, hey, What play was that? It was, check with me. Cool. Where was the back? Left. So why'd you go left? We're going away from the back.
Right.
You know better.
Right.
Fix it.
Right.
Bam. Instead of getting in their face, but you suck. You should have done better. Like,
well, that's the transactional guy, right? Like that's the guy we're trying to move away from. Is everything is like either did you win the game from me or not, and what you're trying to do now is more transformational. Pull a kid aside and talk to him, and I consider myself a still work in progress transformational coach. I know there's been days I've been transactional and. I get frustrated, because I feel like there's a process of, going over the board, on the board, installing the play, going out there and indoing it, and then we go into a 7-7 team situation. Like, dude, really, and to me that's just a kid not concentrating, and focusing and stuff like that. But no, I agree to go back to your point about learning those lessons and those words of the week.
Yeah,
like my biggest thing is I hope that our players will never have to reach into their toolbox because something happens in their life that's devastating that they have to get through.
Sure.
I don't want our players to ever have to go through some tough times. That stinks. That sucks, right? But I know that, they probably are going to, right? In their lifetime, they're going to have to reach back in their toolbox. I just don't want it to be empty, or I don't want it to be filled with a bunch of X's and O's they don't remember.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I football. I know the spread offense. I know, the 3-3 defense, but I don't know anything else. It's like, no, I want there to be like, oh, I need the toughness, perseverance, leadership, teamwork, character, all the things we talk about. Mm-hmm. Like, I want those to be in the toolbox. So when we know it's going to happen, we know at some point in time there's going to be something tough in their life. Hopefully it's not too crazy. Hopefully tragedy is not too big, but we know it's going to happen. And we want them to be able to go into their toolbox and for it not to be empty, and I think that's probably the biggest change that I made in the first few years of me coaching to now is there's a direct, intentional, like lesson plan and curriculum that we pushed out every single year to make sure that those players have things in their toolbox to use.
Which is very powerful. I think more so now than ever. So, I mean, not that this means anything, but just like a word of encouragement is like, I think what you're doing and what you do with coaching, and it's more evident now as we progress further and further in life, but these kids need good role models.
Yeah.
We need to be intentional with building solid quality men because we're lacking there. And so like, man, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but I do not envy your job. It's a tough job. Freaking, I know what I was like in high school. I know what Manny was like in high school. Like, it's a tough job, but having people like you that are committed to it and having the reason of why, it's not to, obviously, you want to have one of the dopest football teams, win championships, great. But hearing you talk about wanting to give them tools to use, I think it's more relevant now than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And I think that's super awesome that you're wanting to do that you are doing that you're taking the time to understand, like, kids are different now, so we need to be less transactional and be more transformational. I think that's something that's huge. And I think too, I don't see our kids going back to like where we grew up. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think there's going to be a great mix if we can take what we all went through, or what our parents went through, and what we're teaching our kids now on how to be productive members of society. It's a lot more than just football. It's you have the potential right now to make or possibly break a young man, right? And that's a scary freaking job, but it's a needed job. So I just want to say I think it's super cool.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
And not an easy job. So that's why I said I don't envy it.
Well, that's why I have a great staff because you can't just do it by yourself, and that's the reason why every single year, no matter. When we go to our coaches retreat, no matter how redundant it may seem to these guys, say, okay, guys, here we go again. Like, these are the things we're trying to do. We go right through our philosophy, right through, what we're trying to do, and a couple of the guys are kind of like, oh God, not again. Yeah. But it's like, hey, we need to review this. We need to make sure we all know what we're doing, like what we're here for and what we're trying to accomplish this year and these, these 14, 15 weeks of the season. So, For sure.
I'm sure you guys heard something similar, but like it's always important. Like the vision has to be clear, the mission needs to be stated, and the execution will follow.
100%.
And so
I think because you can get complacent, you can get you
everything,
fall into your rhythm, just be like, oh, we're here just because we're badass school in South County, and then it's easy just to be like, we're coaching for the weight room, and you fall into that rhythm, then you get comfortable. The moment you're reminded of why you're doing something, or the impact that you can make as a coach and someone in our position, then I think it kind of pumps you up preseason to get ready for everything that's about to happen, because there's a lot of sacrifice. And touch on that before we wrap this up, is how has it affected your personal life, good or bad?
Yeah.
Because we were talking about off air a little bit, and you were
Yeah.
saying how lucky you are to have the wife that you have, and how supportive she is because of her athletic background. And so I think it is. If you're called, it seems like you've been called to be in the position that you're in, to impact other people's lives. Like how does that kind of translate to your personal life?
Yeah, I'll say that that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to come back home, to Mission Viejo, is because when we started adding kids to our family, it was tough for me being at Bosco, and because we didn't move up there, we lived down here the whole time.
Okay.
And it was just tough. It was getting harder and harder. She was, alone more and more, and because we weren't around her family, we weren't as close to her family. It was just, a 30-minute drive to get to, her family, whatever. So, coming back, it's been a lot. It's been a lot better. I have all my friends now. I have her family, my family, that they can help out. And Tim DeRuiter, who's a St. John Bosco graduate as well. He was most recently the D coordinator at Oregon. He was the head coach of Fresno State. Now he's at Texas Tech as the D coordinator. He was telling me, he goes, there's two types of coaches' wives. There's great wives and ex-wives. and he said there's nothing in between. And I always remember him saying that, and I was like, God, that is such a great point. And it's so true. Like, you either have a great wife, which I'm lucky enough to have, or you have an ex-wife. And there's coaches in the profession that have a lot of ex-wives, that aren't as supportive, that don't, and basically they make their husband choose. You're going to keep on coaching or stop and we'll be married, or if you keep on coaching, I'm out. Where my wife's background being a college soccer player, and she's played at San Diego State, and she understands the time that's needed, the devotion that's needed to be good. And I think that the thing that helps too is now that my son, I think if we had all daughters, straight 3 daughters, probably more difficult. But the fact that I have 2 sons, and the one son's already coming around, hanging out, and coming to football camp and playing football, I think she's kind of like, okay, I kind of get where this is going now, and all of that. But she definitely deserves an award, because there's a lot of times I'm not around. And it has nothing to do with the actual coaching part. It's the fundraising, the Boost Club meetings, all of those things that take probably more time than anything, away from your family, and that's the hard part. But she has her sister, she has her parents, she has some of my friends, and so she has her friend group. So thank God. I mean, she's awesome.
Yeah. You good?
I'm good.
Awesome.
It was awesome hearing.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for coming
Of course.
on, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
you.
Of course.
If people want to get in touch, if they have a question, if they want to get a hold of you, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably the best one to be email me at
Okay.
chad.johnson@svusd.org. That's my school district.
Okay.
And then, that's my email address. And if you guys want to, get my phone number out, I don't care. I don't
No
that.
phone number.
Okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, email address, probably the best
Maybe
way
like
to
an
get hold of me.
Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Oh, yeah. I don't even have an Instagram. I have
I am
a
envious.
Twitter. Yeah.
I do not want Instagram.
I have a Twitter handle. It's Diablo C Johnson, I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can, I guess, DM me or whatever. I don't do any of that crap, man. I don't.
Yeah, I wish I didn't have to.
Yeah.
I use it for my business a lot. Other than that,
Dude,
man, I wish I didn't. have to.
We just hired Legendary Sports Media because I don't want to deal with it. I'm like,
Yeah.
because you feel bad when someone, some parents like, well, you liked Johnny's tweet, but you didn't like Jimmy's tweet. I'm like, that's because I was on the toilet when Johnny tweeted something and I saw it, and I liked it because I was on the toilet. I go, when Jimmy tweeted, I happened to not be on the toilet. So therefore I didn't see it because I'm not on Twitter all day long looking and liking. I don't.
Oh, I hate it.
You know, but it's
true though.
You know, I mean, you know, I was like, oh, when are you on social media? When I'm taking a poop.
That's
Yep.
so funny.
That's when I'm on social media.
So true.
When I'm not taking a poop, which is probably once a day, maybe twice a day at most, I am not on social media. So I apologize if those 10 minutes that I was taking a poop, I didn't see your kids, whatever.
So now you guys know Coach Johnson's poop schedule.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
And on that note, make sure you follow us. The Fight Within podcast.
Yeah, go to the website.
Yeah.
Check out thefightwithinpodcast.com. Buy this sweet shirt so I can afford to keep podcasting.
Yeah.
And we can pay our bills. I mean, really, that's all it is. Well, Ben, Chad, thank you for coming on. And
thank you again.
remember, guys, that everything was impossible till someone did it.